The Umpire Inspire podcast is all about the stories, all about the journeys, and all about the heart of being an umpire. I'm your host, Jason Becker. Hi, everyone. Welcome. And thank you so much for tuning in to the Season 2 finale of the Umpire Inspire podcast. Hey, settle in, because I believe you are really going to enjoy visiting with today's guest for the next hour just as much as I did. So when I was first thinking about this little project, this podcast, almost a year ago, there was one umpire who sat undisputed atop my interview wish list. And that person, I'm very happy to say, is today's guest, Major League Baseball umpire Ted Barrett. Ted is a veteran Major League Baseball umpire and crew chief. He's got more than 25 years and well over 3,000 Major League games on his resume. A resume that includes, as you might imagine, numerous all-star and postseason assignments, including World Series in 2007, 11, 14, and 18. And obviously, that is all great. And connecting with Ted is a privilege and an incredible opportunity for us to hear from an outstanding Major League Baseball umpire. But why was Ted at the top of my interview wish list? It's, you know what? It's the man behind the mask, so to speak. I hold Ted in very high regard for his attitude and approach to his career, all the ways that he gives his time and shares what he's learned to help younger umpires. The good and positive and impactful work he has done, both within and outside of baseball. It's his belief that he is a servant. It's his belief that he is obliged to pay forward all of the opportunities and all the blessings that he's been given in his career and in his life. So for me, there's a lot of admiration for Ted Barrett, the umpire, but also a ton of respect for Ted Barrett, the man. This visit was a real thrill for me. So all that to say, settle in and enjoy my conversation with number 65, Ted Barrett. Reverend Dr. Crew Chief Barrett, welcome, my friend, to the Umpire Inspire podcast. Thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
It is absolutely my pleasure and my privilege. Thank you for making this work with me. Hey, before we start, so Ted, you've just come through an unusual season, one that we hope not to repeat, certainly. But what does the offseason look like for you? What do you have planned? What do you have in store?
Yeah, right now, a little bit of rest, catching up with family. Like you, my children are older and out of the house. I had a new grandbaby September 14th that I just met.
Attaboy.
Giving me now, my wife and I have 6 grandkids. And my daughter's in the middle of a move from one house to another, luckily staying in the area. And so we've been immersed in that the last few days. And just trying to catch up and spend time with my grandkids. And with the COVID, things are a little bit different. We usually do, a couple of mission trips during the off season. Those are looking a little bit different now. And we have our annual retreat that we do with the Umpires for Calling for Christ, and that's bringing its own challenges also. So we're working through all that and trying to adjust to this way of life like everybody else.
Yeah, for sure. But it does sound like that some things don't change. And for you, coming off of a season, that rest and reconnection with your family are two of the top priorities. Yeah,
absolutely. And, this year was a little bit different also in that usually able to get home on a day off or, us getting our breaks during the season, able to get home and take care of some things at the house that didn't happen this year. So
right,
getting back here and taking care of things around the house. I'm a guy who's got a lot of older motorcycles and helping my kids with their vehicles and things like that. So a lot of grease monkey work going on here, and hopefully fixing things instead of making them worse and breaking them. But
That's good. Getting into an engine or getting into the dirt in your garden is good for the soul.
Absolutely.
Well, good. Enjoy it, Ted. You've earned it. Boy, where to begin today? Ted, you're familiar with this little show. We are not so much about rules and mechanics here. There's a lot of other great podcasts and great sources that do a terrific job with that. We're a little bit more about the stories and the journeys and the heart of umpires. And Ted, I know you to be an umpire and a man with a lot of heart. Ted, I want to tell you that in the 2 short seasons of this show, no umpire has been name checked by my guests more than you. Probably a half dozen of my guests have ticked you off the list when it comes to an umpire that they've encountered as they've been coming up, somebody who has supported them, somebody who has helped them along their own journey, somebody who has taught them something very important and taken the time to visit with them or to teach them something as a young umpire. So take that as a compliment, my friend. You've got a lot of fans out there and folks that you have helped along the way. So let me just start right there. You have served as that sort of teacher and mentor for a lot of young umpires. Take us back to the first chapters of your journey, Ted, and tell me a little bit about the teachers and mentors. Who were the folks that helped you along when you were first getting started?
Yeah, first of all, thanks. I'm humbled by that, and I absolutely have had so many people pour into me that I feel like it's my duty to turn around and do the same. And also, that's why I really like the show, because it is about the journey and about the relationships. And we can talk mechanics and the finer points of umpiring all day, but I think it's even better when we start talking about the relationships and how we get there and how we got there. So yeah, I appreciate that. And for me, I just had so many, starting out from when I first started, in my high school, doing high school baseball and working my way up. And I met a couple of guys at a clinic that were minor league umpires. And let me back up. I played football at a small college, Cal State Hayward, down in the Bay Area in California. And I had done some little league umpiring, and now I had moved into the high school realm. And there was Ron Barnes ran a high school group. Ron was a AAA umpire at the time, and he had a clinic that I attended. Gary Darling was an instructor there, Dale Scott. Okay. And they encouraged me to go to umpire school, and I met Bob Brooks was in the Pioneer time, and there was a couple other guys that were minor league umpires, and Bob came out and did some Legion ball with me and started to prepare me for umpire school. And in 1989, off I went to Joe Brinkman's umpire school, and Joe was the first big league umpire that I had met beside Gary and Dale. They were teaching the clinic, and then Joe invited Jeff Nelson and I from that class. He invited us back to teach, which is interesting because we were the 2 guys that made it to the major leagues out of that class. Yep. So teaching at umpire school was a great thing. And then I was fortunate enough to teach clinics with not just Gary Darling and Dale Scott. It expanded. Larry Poncino, Mike Winters, Billy Joe Speck, who I know is doing college ball now, Dan Wickham, who had some games in the National League. So these are the guys that teaching clinics with them, I learned so much. And I was so fortunate to do that. We actually came up to the Northwest a couple times too, as well, up to the Seattle area. And we would just go, we would do 2 or 3 clinics a year and take it on the road. Doug Harvey was a guest instructor a couple of times. So, wow. To teach with a legend was really cool. And then, and then at umpire school, we had Joe Brinkman and Steve Ripley were on staff. Tim Cheetah spent a lot of time down there. And then, we'd have people come in to visit. Then in 1994, when I first went to the big leagues, I worked my first big league game with Jim Evans, and, there's no better person with the rules of baseball, and right. Just was able to learn from him. And then I went to Rich Garcia. I was so green that Marty Springstead, that's another name of a guy that who was the supervisor of a former American League umpire, and he's a supervisor for the American League. And Marty talked to me a lot about leadership, about life, about the crew chief. Here I wasn't even on the staff yet. He was preparing me to be a crew chief. So he was a wonderful man. He sent me to Rich Garcia because he felt like Rich was an excellent teacher, and he is. A lot of tough love with Rich. He would really, he really challenged me, and I think I learned more from him. And there was 8 crew chiefs at the time in the American League, and there were 6 different ways to work the 4-man system. And I'd never worked 4-man, so I got to the big leagues. I literally learned on the job. AAA, we were 3-man, and even in the fall league back then, we were 3-men. And the young guys now are so much more prepared than we are. But Drew Coble and Larry Barnett and all these crew chiefs that I got to work with, I just felt really, really fortunate.
Right.
Don Denkinger, on and on it goes. But, a lot of these, and I think about the people that we've lost, working with Rick Reed and Darryl Cousins, who we lost recently. They became crew chiefs. Ken Kaiser and I became good friends. Durwood Merrill and one of the characters of the game.
Yeah.
Steve Palermo comes to mind. He was a guy that, his umpiring career was cut short, but he never lost the passion for umpiring and the passion to teach it. And, Stevie would talk umpiring from sun up to sundown. So, I threw a lot of names out there, but those are people that definitely shaped me as an umpire. And I feel like I was just so blessed to have so many people that would pour in, and all I had to do was ask, and I had these resources that, so I feel like when I walk on the field, I'm kind of a hodgepodge and a mishmash of all these different umpires that I learned from. And
well, aren't we all, right?
Yes, amen. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that is a who's who of the era when you were coming up as a young umpire. Tell me, think back to when you were, that 1994, 1995 era when you're running into guys like Marty and Rich, working with Jim Evans. These guys are pouring into you. When you think back on yourself during that time, do you feel like you had ears to hear what those guys had to say? Like, were you receptive? Were you just attacking what they had to tell you? Would you do anything different as a learner of umpiring?
I was just so green, and everybody knew it. I only had a couple of months in AAA that I absolutely was humbled myself to the fact that I needed to learn all I could. And what I found was the veteran guys, even working in the fall league with Field and Colbert, he had 10 games in the big leagues at the time, and I had 0. So I knew that he had a lot to offer, and he did. And I always never thought too much of myself where I couldn't learn from someone that had been there. I remember just sitting down with John Shulock, and he was a tough nut to crack because he was kind of a quiet guy, stayed to himself. But I remember asking him about throwing situations and, with people getting hit, and when do you issue warnings, and when do you eject. And I remember he just sat there and just laid out his whole philosophy on it. And, but that, sometimes with guys, you have to dig a little bit. You have to ask questions. You have to, so, I think about the guys, like I said, that have passed on, like a John McSherry, who I sat with and just listened to. I wish I would have asked more questions.
A young man, a young woman in any field, we're still learning how to ask questions and how to listen and how to sit at the feet of those who have come before us. I think all of us to a degree.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you were in question mode from the get-go.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I never ran into someone who, and, it has to be in the right, sometimes the right gathering, the right situation. Sure. You don't want to dominate the conversation, or if the person's trying to relax and doesn't want to, you kind of have to feel that out. But, when I would get to a cruise, sometimes I would ask one of the guys, hey, can we go to lunch? Now we're in a one-on-one setting, and
there you go.
And I remember, Rick Reed even, he sat down with me, and after my first game in the big leagues, and the next day we talked for 3 hours at lunch, and we didn't even really talk about umpiring. We talked about raising children. We talked about being married. We talked about the challenges of being on the road. What had been successful for him. So it's there's so much to learn, not just about the balls and strikes and the mechanics, but just the life and what this profession carries at all the different levels. So yeah, anybody listening, I would definitely just ask questions. There's no stupid questions. Nothing's out of bounds, but get the person in the right setting where they're prepared to answer you the best that they can.
Let's stick with this topic just for a second here, Ted. Your first couple of years, you mentioned again, I'll go back to Marty, telling you about being a crew chief, telling you kind of what it takes, what the responsibilities are. I'd like to ask about you as a crew chief now, Ted. 2020 crew, if I'm correct, was Adrian Johnson, Mark Ripperger, and Quinn Wolcott. Quinn Wolcott, my hometown guy. We share a hometown up here.
Yeah. Fun to have Quinn. He did a great job.
What is your approach as a crew chief? What did you learn back in the day from your first chiefs? What were the most influential things that those guys taught you that you now bring as a crew chief for the guys that you're working with?
Well, I remember when I first came up working with the crew chiefs, you walk out on the field, there's 50,000 fans. There's players in each dugout. There's people watching on TV. There's the TV commentators are up there giving their opinions about you. The thing I was most nervous about was the crew chief. Walking out there, I wanted to impress him. I wanted to show him that I belonged in Major League Baseball. I wanted to be worthy of someone to be poured into. All those things went through my head. So when I get a guy, especially a new guy, I want to make sure that he is as comfortable as he can be. Because when you're comfortable, you're going to be successful. I'm the encouraging crew chief. I'm the empathetic. I know. I feel like I know what they're going through. I try to remember back. And then when I get a guy on my crew, a full-time guy, I took a guy like Adrian this year, and I feel it's my duty to prepare Adrian to be a crew chief as my two-man, and he's going to be a great crew chief. And so, just trying to pour into him as much as I could with leadership and situations, range situations and things like that. Although, staying on the West Coast, we didn't have a whole lot of those, but also, with Quinn and Mark and their new guys. So that was great. Just getting to know them a little bit. I love to learn about their families and their backgrounds. And again, just going out there and knowing that we have each other's back on the field and off, and nothing's going to happen on the field that we can't handle. And we had a successful year. I think, you work with so many crew chiefs that you take the things that you like from that crew chief and you apply them.
Yep.
You take the things maybe that you don't like personally, and so I don't do those. I try to lead by example. I'll never ask one of my crew to do something that I won't do myself. And what I find is the guys, they'll run through a brick wall for you if they know you've got their back, and
absolutely,
and you'll do the same. Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic because here we are basically kind of supervisors, but we're doing the same job too. So again, I think they watch that I practice what I preach, and there's certain things we can do as crew chiefs that younger guys can't, but ultimately I think we're by just leading by example is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And then being available to answer questions and try to help guys through the benefit of the experience on the field and off.
Dig into that with me, Ted. Leading by example and being a supportive, encouraging crew chief. What are some of your habits or some of your attitudes that you bring to the field that you believe contribute to your success as a crew member, and then those types of things that you're wanting to lead by example that contribute to your success as a crew chief?
I think the crew sets the tone as far as showing up to the ballpark, even meeting in the car to go to the game. Are we going to have a positive attitude? Are we there to work? are we there to complain? If you've got this kind of heavy oppression hanging over you, for me, I try to, hey, no matter what's going on in the umpire world, in my personal life, when I show up to the field, I want to go out and be my best, and I want to be excellent, and I want the crew to be excellent, and they want to succeed too. So, if you show up and you're complaining about everything, or it's a challenge. It was a big time challenge this year. It's a big time challenge at the major league level, the minor league level, or the little league level, right? Sometimes you show
That's
up,
right.
You're tired, you fought traffic, you're battling with your wife, you've got problems with your kids. Can we block all that out as we get ready to go out and work the game? That's a true professional. And I mean professionals at every level. And then can you lead that by example with your crew? They know you're going through some hard times. They may be going through something themselves, but we go out on the field, we work together, we're excellent, we get through it. And then when the game's over, I like to talk with guys. I like to wait when there's a situation that maybe we could have handled better. We'll take a shower and get something to eat, and then we'll talk about it. And I think also as a crew chief, you have to be humble enough to say, what do you think, guys? Could I have handled that better?
Yeah.
It's like being a dad. You're a dad, and those of us that are dads know. Sometimes you go to your kids and you're like, you're the authority figure, but you also have to, hey, you know what? I could have handled that better.
Yeah.
I do that with my crew sometimes. You know what? I messed that up, and I'm going to fix it. And then when I go to them and I say, hey, you know what? I think you could have handled this better. I think they receive it a lot, with more of an open ears rather than think that I'm just coming down on them with something, because
right.
I think they know that I want them to succeed, and they know I want them to do their best. And every guy I've ever worked with has been appreciative of that and receptive of that. If a guy wasn't, I think I probably wouldn't waste my time, trying to help him. But I've never run into that at all.
Being an umpire and being a dad or being a mom, there's a lot of parallels there. And I've mentioned on this show before, my kids roll their eyes and are so weary of me saying, it's like umpiring. because there's a lot of the same lessons we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you ever have a hard time with that connection part? Have there been, not naming names, of course, but every relationship's different. And I imagine that some umpires that have been placed on your crew, you've connected immediately with, but some you've had to really work hard to make that connection over the course of a long season.
Me, I've been able to connect with everybody I've ever worked with and been assigned to. We have a lot of kids that come through that, are fill-in guys. And this year it was pretty cool. Got to work with a lot of guys who have the triple digits. I know Clint Vondrak worked his plate job with us, and that was really cool. And I enjoy getting, you talk about Green, he hadn't worked a full Major League spring training. He had a few Major League games here and there, but to walk out on the field with him,
that's great.
He worked his first plate job. Yeah, it was great. And we had a lot of young guys, and we get a lot of young guys together. It's funny because, I turned 55 this season, and so I'm the age of the older crew chiefs when I was coming up and down. And I remember looking at some of these guys going, man, this guy is so old. This guy's older than my dad. And so, we'll get young guys, and I'll say, hey, how old's your dad? And I'm older than their father.
Bad news, Ted. That's you now.
Yeah, that is. I've become the old guy. I've become the old guy that we used to make fun of, lovingly make fun of. I worked with Tim McClellan so many years, and he's such a great man. He's a great umpire and a great teacher, but we like to tease him. We like to tease the chief sometimes. And, now I see the guys teasing me and kind of rolling their eyes when I say something. Or I love John Tumpain. I got to work with him, and he'd say, hey, Chief, tell us a story, And then I'd tell him about something that happened, or he'd say, Chief, did you work the World Series here? Get me started on my World Series stories. And I know it's kind of tongue in cheek, but I play along.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but one thing that does concern me is, now we get these 20, mid guys in their 20s coming up, making their debut, and some of them are, younger than my children. And so there's that loss of connection sometimes of,
Okay.
generational gap.
Yeah.
And also, music's a big thing. I love playing music in the car and talking. We play it in the locker room where we're playing cards, and I'm a music guy, and my tastes are all over the place. So like, I'll connect with a guy like Ben May, who's he loves his music, and he's a drummer. He's a great musician. So we'll talk music. But then I'll get another guy, and I might hear someone singing like, oh, this is the Temptations or somebody. And I'm singing along on the radio, and a young guy will be like, "Hey, who's that? I've never heard of them." And I'm like, "You got to be kidding me! I mean, we've been living under a rock." And so. But the one universal thing is when we walk on the field,
yeah,
it's we're speaking the same language, and so that's cool. And I'll say this: that I mentioned Tom Payne, that era. I know you had Trip Gibson on the show, and
yep,
Corey Blazer, Adam Ham. This era of guys, these guys are so good. They're just their generation is so much better than we are. We were better than our forefathers, whether they want to admit it or not. But we had better training. The umpire schools, the fall league with Rich Garcia and Steve Palermo being down in the fall league. These guys are able to sit and observe on a nightly basis and make people better. And so and now with the training that's available to these younger guys and the ZE system and the way they're able to see the next day how they called pitches and call the zone, they're going to be so much better than we were. Yeah, so it's the future of umpiring is great. And so in a lot of ways, I have to stay in my lane on what I can teach them. And a lot of times they're better umpires than I am. So maybe I can help them now, maybe in some leadership, in some just in some life experience and how to raise children in this game, how to handle situations, because I think that's one thing that they do lack, especially now that there's replay. There's a lot less arguments on the bases, and you've still got the batter confrontations, and wherever the future goes, that might be eliminated. But I think that's what some of the older guys, we can kind of talk to them about.
Sure.
How to handle situations, how to handle people, how to all those things. And so we still have, even though we're the old dogs, we still have a lot to offer.
And the good ones, the ones who are going to last, are going to have their ears wide open.
Absolutely, yes.
John Tumpane, big fan of John Tumpane, and of course Trip. I hold Trip in such high esteem as an umpire and as a man, and so it was a true pleasure to visit with him on this show as well. So Ted, we've talked a lot about the heart, the stories, and the why behind what we're even doing out here as umpires, either at a major league level like you or at a amateur level like myself. A big part of your story is your Christian faith, and you were part of the group that started an organization called Calling for Christ. I'm wondering if you would be willing to share a little bit about that. Why an organization like that needs to exist, and kind of what your background as a Christian man, as a spiritual man, what does that mean for your career as an umpire?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about that. As we were coming through the minor leagues, there was really it was kind of a culture shock. They prepared us for it at umpire school the best that they could, but going into the minor leagues, it was, especially back in the late 80s, early 90s, it was something that was really hard for me. The number one, the language. It was like being in the military, where bad words are adjectives, pronouns. It was just baseball talk. and it was vulgar, and it was, and being on the road, everything that goes along with traveling on a road and staying in hotels and being gone for long periods of time. These things were prevalent. A lot of us found ourselves, falling right into the bad language because it was all around us. So rather than standing out, we were kind of conforming to that world. And there really was no way for us to practice our faith because most Sunday we're at 1:00 and it's hard to get up and go to church and then get back and get ready for the ball game. And there was, we didn't talk much about faith. Maybe on a long drive with a partner, you might get into a conversation about God, but those were few and far between. And so there really wasn't anything for us. There was baseball chapel, which was come in on Sundays, and it was really designed for the players. So some of us, we would sneak into a chapel there, but sitting in chapel with the player is we brought up some weird emotions there, and then you go out on the field and it's back to battling like cats and dogs. And
right.
So it's like, and there's a group called UPI, which is a great group. I'm honored to sit on their board now, and they're former professional baseball players mentoring and ministering to professional baseball players. So these groups really did a good job of trying to reach out to us, but no one knows what umpires go through except umpires. So we saw a need, and a couple of us got together and said, hey, maybe we can form something like this for umpires. And I think Brent Rice came up with the name Calling for Christ, and we said, that's perfect. And now it's just, known as CFC around baseball. We started with Rob Drake and I said, we should have a retreat. We kind of modeled it after UPI's retreat for the players. And so we got a pastor to come up with the guitar. We met in the middle of the country in Oklahoma, and we sent out some emails and said, we don't know if anybody's going to show up but us. But we had 12 guys show up that first time. And and then that doubled the next year. And now, we had about 60 last year. It's going to drop down obviously with COVID this year, so we try to be careful and, but that also fed into, we do a Friday prayer call in the big leagues. And then on Saturday, the minor league guys get on. We do a discipleship program where groups get together, either one-on-one and sometimes a small group, 4 or 5. We do, on Tuesdays, we have guys come through and teach a Bible study. And we have just a support group. Funerals, I've been able to have had the honor and privilege of preaching at some funerals, some of our guys and that have passed away and family members, been able to officiate some weddings for umpires and their families. So it's really just it's a chance for us to practice our faith as umpires, but also to reach out and serve all of the professional umpires in the community. So it's an honor, it's a privilege. Some of the guys have gotten out of professional baseball, taken it into the college level and the high school level. So I'd always being very respectful of everybody and their beliefs, but I think we're really just giving the guys the opportunity to practice their faith, but also spread their faith among other guys, and just trying to minister to our fellow umpires and reach out to them. And then through that, we work closely through UmpsCare, which is not a faith-based organization, but they're doing great work, and we get behind them as a CFC, and we help them, just as much as we can. We support them, and I'm a big believer in what UmpsCare does as well. So those are the two things that I give a lot of time and talent and treasure to. So it also fosters this unity among umpires, whether it's CFC and the faith-based thing, or it's some guys don't want to engage in that. So with UmpsCare, they're able to, get out and give and be generous with their time and their finances. And when we come together, whether it's at a retreat for CFC, even or Sunday morning over Uvu, a little church service, or we do a fundraiser for our golf or UmpScare. It's umpires coming together, having a good time, and doing some good things for good people.
I love it. And there's so many ways to do good things for good people, to use our platform and who we are as a service. As a Christian man myself, Ted, I view my work as an amateur umpire, especially for Little League. That is my act of service. I feel so fortunate that I have had so much in my life that's been given to me, and this is a way that I've chosen, a path that I see to give back. And so places like UmpsCare, places like Calling for Christ, you're not doing it wrong if you're not involved with a specific group, this group or that group. But I think as umpires, one common trait we all have in common is passing it along. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
Whether it's mentoring the next generation of umpires or just giving back in some way, I think in a lot of ways that characterizes us.
Absolutely. And, that I just wanted to touch on what you had mentioned, because you struck a nerve, but, what much is given, much is required. And like you said, that's what you've got to, we're so blessed. It's really our duty to give back. And then also you talked about your umpire being an act of service. I absolutely agree. And I look at it as an act of worship, because this is the job I believe God strategically placed us in this job. And I believe he strategically places you on that Little League field to do his work, because, no one can, like I said, no one understands what an umpire goes through. So no one can reach an umpire except another umpire. Which is why we feel like at CFC, that's one of the reasons we started. And I think that's one of the reasons that we're so successful, is because we're really the only ones doing that professionally anyway.
That's got to be such a huge support for the guys who participate in that group and for whom that is important. The spiritual component to keep it going over the marathon of a big league season. Again, without getting into too many specifics, because that's a personal issue for these guys. But what kinds of ways has Calling for Christ been impactful for guys who have participated? How exactly does being a part of a group like that help you as a major league umpire? How does it help you get through on a game by game or a season by season basis? What kinds of things have you seen?
Well, I see for the guys that it's really cool to see the breakdown of our group, because you've got guys that were raised in the church, and then you've got guys who have no church background at all. And so, taking this common theme of umpiring, the challenges that we all go through, and just trying to help each other. And the cool thing is, just like umpiring, the things that I know cold are the things that I messed up in the minor leagues or even in the big leagues. So like the rules that I've messed up, I know those verbatim now.
Yeah.
And we have so many guys involved with CFC, big league guys that said, hey, look, I made this mistake when I was in the minor leagues with my life. I don't want you to do that. And so they're pouring into young guys, or little things. One of our guys came to us and said, hey, I got my girlfriend pregnant. And then, so we have a big league guy that says, hey, look, I did that too when I was in the minor leagues, but let's, I'm in this big league umpire is married and now he's, a grandpa, and he was able to come alongside that guy and go, okay, look, we're going to get through this together, and we're going to, we're going to do this the honorable way. Other guys coming with us, even finances, say, I'm in bad shape right now financially because I made some mistakes. And then, some of us as big league guys come to him and go, I've done that too. And this is, but now I got out of it. I'll drop this name because Alfonso Marquez, one of my best friends and a great major league umpire, as you know. He had trouble, and I don't speak behind his back. I know he'd give me permission to do this. he had an alcohol addiction, and it led to problems with him, with his family, and ultimately with relationships, with friendships. And now he doesn't drink alcohol at all. And so he'll talk with minor league guys that are struggling with that, and he'll say, okay, look, this is what I went through, and this is how I can help you. And that's reached out to. He's helped out some NHL referees, some NBA referees. I mean, his influence and outreach has been huge. And he's a guy that, hey, we can overcome addiction and be even better, because he was always a good umpire, and now he's even better. So it's community. It's I've been there, done that, and I can help you through that. And I think that's huge. But here's the satisfaction that I get are guys that maybe have no interest in anything of religion or God, and then they'll come to us and say, hey, my father's ill. Can you pray for him?
Yeah.
Or, my marriage is hurting. Can you pray for us? And being able to help them and minister to them and walk them through, my mother passed away, we're going to come alongside you and we're going to help you get through that. And, let's look at what the Bible says about that. And being able to walk them through, that's where I get a lot of my joy. And that's when I feel like, that's the reason God still got me doing this. I'm going to retire as soon as he says, he lets me do that. But for me also, it's a tremendous, as I go along the season and I get discouraged, I've got brothers that come alongside me and say, hey, let's keep going. Let's keep running the race. Let's throw off the things that hinder us and let's finish strong. And so that's kind of been my theme the last few years. I want to finish strong, not just in my umpiring career, but in my life as well. So, thanks. That's the sermon for today. Thanks for allowing me to preach that.
All right, let's go. Bring it, brother. Bring it. I'm familiar with Fonzie's story, and I've read a little bit about some of the off-season trips that the two of you have taken together, and some other off-season service trips or mission trips that you've done over the course of your career, Ted. And I was wondering if you might share a little bit about some of the opportunities you've had, some of the opportunities that you've made over the years to do some extra stuff, and share a little bit about that side of your off season.
Yeah, it's been really cool. And once again, it's umpiring, right? Baseball's the universal language. And so
exactly.
Just reflecting back on all the places I've been, as you asked the question, going with Alfonso to Mexico. Then we've gone down there to work some exhibition games too, and in regular season games in Mexico City and Monterrey. Going with him to the small village he's from, it's really, to see his humble beginnings and the way he gives back to that community is really cool. Working with the Mexican umpires, both the professional ones and the amateur ones, that's been really gratifying. Going to their umpire school and actually getting to teach, that was fantastic. Been going down to Cuba the last 7 years. And God just opened doors for us down there with their professional umpires.
Wow. And
that's been really cool. Yeah. And, been able to take them gear and, despite everything that goes on politically, it's just like, hey, those are people that God wants to reach, and, using us as hand and feet to get down there. And it's been really cool watching so many stories, going down there with Angel Hernandez, who, Angel was actually born in Cuba, and then I went back down there with him. It was his first time back,
right? 50
some years later, and he was able to spread his father's ashes, and
oh man,
as he got baptized there in the ocean. It's just an incredible story, and we were able to baptize some of the Cuban umpires, which in a country that doesn't happen very often. That was really fantastic. And then going over to Germany with UPI, as they taught baseball, using the platform of teaching baseball, we got into the public schools, and we were able to share the message of Jesus, to share the gospel, and that was really a cool thing. And I went along and taught umpiring. Clay Park and I were there together, and word got out that we were there, and these guys started coming from miles around just to have a little impromptu clinic and just ask umpiring questions. And
excellent.
It was really, really, it was cool. Yeah. And so there's so many opportunities for us to get out. The Eastern European nations, the Soviet nations that are opening up, that are playing baseball, they need umpire training, right? Because it's usually they get bats, balls, bases, a backstop, and what else we need? Oh yeah, we need umpires. Kind of the last thing they think of.
Afterthought, right?
But we are the afterthoughts. But the training opportunities to go over there and share the gospel as we do that. There's just so many opportunities. So yeah, a lot of great trips I've been able to go on with a lot of fun people, and and be able to teach umpiring and share the gospel. It's been really cool.
Really appreciate you sharing. Really appreciate you sharing all that. Thank you for inspiring me and a lot of other people with what you do there. Let's if you've got a few more minutes for me, Ted, let's turn to on field, shall we?
Sure.
Let me knock out a couple more questions for you, and then we'll send you on your way to go visit with the grandkids.
That sounds great.
All right. Well, again, where to begin with your career? A decorated career, Ted, and showing no signs of stopping yet. Drop some knowledge. Tell me about your game right now. Here's the phrase that, as an amateur umpire, I hear every game from my partner. What are you working on today? Right? And Ted, you're a 25-plus year veteran. You've got well over 3,000 major league games under your belt, but I know there are still things you're working on. Can you tell us what's an example of a part of your game today that you want to continue working on, that you feel like you can improve in 2021? Can you think of an example?
Sure. Yeah. Always looking to improve.
Yeah.
And I guess the biggest thing, I talk about this with young guys all the time, is, the older guys don't know the rules as well because I think we get complacent. And not all of us, but a lot of us, myself included. You get the day-to-day of running a crew and calling balls and strikes, and sometimes take it for granted the things that we know. But I think the changes come in, and sometimes we don't stay as current on them, or when things happen on the field, as we all know, everybody that's umpired, it's like, okay, now wait a minute, what was that?
Yeah.
Where does the runner go in that situation? Okay, it used to be this, but that rule's changed. And so I think what I could do better is stay up on the changes better.
Okay.
I think I can, always refresh myself. I think I can take time out here in the downtime to just dig into some more knotty problems. Mm-hmm. And just get my nose in the rule book and read more. As a minister of the gospel, I've got my nose in the Bible all the time. Like you, I've read it through, but that certainly doesn't mean I know it. As a matter of fact,
That's for sure.
When it comes to the Bible, it's the more I read it and the more I learn, the more I know I'm just kind of scratching the tip of the iceberg. And that's the rule book. Umpire School in 1989, and rule book every day, pass the test. And
there you go.
I've got to stay in it, and so I think I could do a better job of that. But I want to stress this: I am big on the basics.
Okay.
The things that those of you that went to umpire school or have been taught by someone that's gone to umpire school, you don't need to get away from that. If you watch my stance, when I first got in, Dick Nelson was my supervisor on the West Coast here, and he put me in the scissors.
Uh-huh.
And I worked that for a while, and then I kind of went back to the school, to the box, and just playing with different stances. So my era, we were kind of getting away from being on the knee. And so I kind of just settled back into what I learned at umpire school. And for the most part, that's where I stay. On the bases, in the minor leagues, we're all looking for the good style or the way to take the plays or what looks good. And remember, I got to the big leagues, and Rich Garcia told me, he said, "What'd you learn at umpire school?" I said, "Yeah, get your 90, hands on knees set." He said, "Then don't change it.
Do that."
Yeah. And Marty Springstead taught me, I remember when I first got to the big leagues, he said, he knew I had a boxing background. So he said, hey, if you're in the gym, you're sparring, you're training for 6 weeks for a fight, what do you do when you get in the ring? And it all reverts back to your training. So
Right.
you don't go changing things. He said, you're in the big leagues now. You don't need to change anything. You revert back to your training. So when I find myself struggling during a game, hopefully it's not too often, but when it does, I go back to the basics, like head height,
Yep.
stance, am I in the slot? Timing is a big thing with me. Following the ball with my eyes, not having tunnel vision. If I follow the ball with my eyes all the way into the glove, that usually fixes my timing, fixes the problems that I have with seeing the ball. And, I have the advantage of working in stadiums where if they're replaying a pitch, I can see where my head height is at the time. And,
Oh, okay.
And sometimes I can correct that. In the minor leagues before that, we would I'd talk to my partners, the guys that I trust, and am I too low? Yeah, you should come up a little bit. Looks like your head height's too low, because you don't know.
Right.
And maybe some of you guys like yourself that do little league or high school, and it's not televised. If you can have a partner, or maybe even your wife or your girlfriend, come out with a camera and film you for a couple innings, just stand behind you on each side. I think that's a great tool. But getting back to the basics, I think is huge. So
for sure.
as much as we all want to take our game to the next level, but and it does change a little bit whether you're doing a 9-year-old catcher. I don't know if I want to be in the slot too much. You don't really have to, right? Because you're looking over his head anyway,
Right.
and you might want to hide behind him a little. I think I'd wear the balloon if I was doing the 9-year-olds, but you start getting into the high school ball with the bigger catchers and in college and all the way up to the major leagues. The mechanics of it are all the same thing. And going back to the basics are the main thing.
Well, it's really good to know that 25 years later that you're still, as you say, you've still got your nose in the rule book, Ted. That's good advice for all of us.
Yeah, I want to throw this out because I think it's applicable to what you were saying. Is a lot of times we play the what if game in the locker room. It's like, okay, what if that ball would have gone in the dugout, even though it didn't? Let's talk about what if it did.
Yep.
What if we had obstruction there, and but it didn't affect the play. But what if it did?
Yeah.
And you got to humble yourself too to the fact that, number one, you don't know everything. Number two, sometimes we just have brain cramps. With on the field, it's like, oh boy, what if that happened? And I'll go over between innings and I'll say, hey, did that ball hit the roof? What is that a fair ball? Can it be caught? Let's communicate. And so when it happens, we're ready to jump all over it and look good. Jim Evans used to say, an umpire's biggest challenge is the unexpected. I'm paraphrasing. I can't remember exactly how he put it, but I always remember that because if we can play the what if game and now it does happen, man, we're going to be all over it.
I have umpires in my life that ask that what if question too. And I have to be honest, I'm not always excited to hear that question because it's a challenge.
Yeah.
And you want to get it right. You want to have an intelligent conversation, but sometimes it's just baffling. But it's such a good learning tool.
Guys have to stay humble too. And remember, there's no shame in going, I don't know.
Right.
And let me look that up, or what do you got? Or saying, yeah, you know what? You've changed my mind on that. Because if we're just sitting around talking umpiring, a lot of us have the ego that, I'm the rules expert and don't try to tell me I'm wrong. But if we can listen to the other side, sometimes it's like, yeah, I see what you say. One thing that frustrates me is like, you'll get an umpire who, a lot of guys will send me naughty problems or plays and they'll ask my opinion. And then if I don't give them the answer that they like, they argue with me. It's like, you asked my opinion and now I gave it, and doesn't mean I'm right. But let's have a discussion about it. And I think some guys get too overheated and it goes with society, right? We don't know how to disagree with each other anyway. So
let the conversation be the thing that you're seeking out. I think is how I approach that. Not being right or proving someone else wrong or making a point. The conversation itself is the end goal.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
All the rest flows out of that in a lot of ways. Ted, we're approaching the end of our time here. I've got 2 more on-field questions for you. If you'd dig back into your memory banks, I've got a little bio information on you here, and your list of big games is long. Tell me about an umpiring moment on field, Ted, or a game that you would most like to relive.
Oh boy,
could be for any reason. The history of the moment, the history of the game.
Yeah,
it could be something as simple as a moment that you had with a partner on the field. It could be anything, but think of 1 or maybe 2 moments over the course of your career that you would really like to relive.
Well, I'll tell you the last out of both perfect games that I was behind the plate for. I think,
of course, yeah,
that would be cool to relive that. And I kind of on both of them, we just kind of rushed off the field because the teams were celebrating. There was kind of chaos. I wish I would have maybe stood there and soaked it in a little bit more.
Oh, really?
Just being a moment in time, and even some of the World Series games, the Game 7s that I've worked in. Just kind of watch the celebration of the winning team and the disappointment of the losing team. I think one thing I've always done, I've learned it from the old timers I worked with, was get the heck off the field.
Yes.
Let that be the story. We're out of the way, we're gone. But to sit back and maybe just watch it unfold would be kind of cool. It'd be awkward to see the home plate umpire standing at home plate and watching it all play out. But, if I could go back and maybe relive those and just, but I've got them in my mind. And then, one of the great moments, and this goes right with your show because you're more about the heart of it. Worked with Tim McClellan. It was his 4,000th game. And we were in Detroit, he's a Michigan guy originally.
Okay.
And his dad was there. Who's passed on since then. And his dad was sitting in an empty seat next to his mother had passed away. And so it was Tim's mom and Tim's mom and dad had come to so many of his games, and I'd been able to be with them when they had visited, and the family was, his sister and his wife and his children. And so, the 4,000th game, the empty seat, and to watch Tim become overcome with emotion as he stood at home plate. And it was really, it was a cool experience for me to watch. And, 4,000 games is going to be tough to achieve now with replay and vacations. And I don't know if anybody's going to reach that. And certainly nobody's going to catch Joe when he breaks
That's right.
the record of 5,000 plus. I mean, that's just not going to happen. So from my era down, it'll be I don't think anybody's going to reach 4,000. I don't think the young guys are going to be able to reach 3,000, even with a 25-year career. But to stand there and watched him as he reflected just on all his games. Now, later in the game, he ended up running Leland on a play, but at least for that moment at home plate, as they put the message on the board and the crowd cheering him, and him thinking and reflecting on his his past.
Yep.
Up to that point, 40 years in professional baseball, and that was a cool moment. That was really a neat thing to experience.
That
I'm
is
glad to be a part of it.
I can imagine, and that is exactly it, Ted. That's exactly it. The big games, the World Series Game 7s, the final outs of the perfect games. Those are moments in their own way, but I've got goosebumps and a big smile on my face actually hearing you tell that story about Tim, and I can picture his dad sitting there in the crowd, so proud of his son and all the great memories that he had of his folks watching him as he came up. Man, thanks for sharing that story. That is a great one.
Thank you.
Finally, Ted, when you look back on your career, what on-field achievement are you most proud of?
Well, I've been extremely lucky in that physically I haven't had any major injuries. And I was able to work through the bumps and bruises, come from a working class family, and you show up for work. And
right.
I think it's one of the things I'm most proud of, is that I've never missed an assignment. I've only missed 2 games, out of the, minor league, major league, in my career. I've never missed an assignment. Yeah. So, but all that is also a lot of luck, from physically not being injured. A lot of good umpires who show up to work as well have missed games because of injury. I don't mean to, their work ethic. But yeah, I've just been very fortunate. My goal, Lord willing, I'll continue to keep that going. And, so if you look at my games worked, in my years, they're up there because, I've been able to work the max amount of games, and, just fortunate in that and blessed. And, that's my example of the legacy that I can leave, is that, he showed up for work. He had a good attitude, and, he worked hard. I'm not going to be known as one of the best umpires ever to put on the uniform, but if people say, he showed up and gave his best effort every day,
that's right.
I'm proud of that. And then also that, he treated it as an act of worship toward God. And, there's times that, I've done that really well, and there's times I've done that really poorly, but, that's what I strive to do every day.
It's just like working a game, right? Some days you have it, and some days you just kind of don't. But every day you show up, and you
yes.
You show up for work. You put on your hard hat, and you grab your lunchbox, and you get the job done. And so it's very respectable to be that guy, in my view, to be the guy who's there, who's giving it every single day. So
yeah, if I can pass this on, it's something that Marty Springstead told me, and told a lot of us. And he always said, don't let the highs get too high, don't let the lows get too low. So there's times when you're umpiring really well and things are going great, and keep that in perspective from the times that things aren't going so well. So and I always tell guys, listen, when you walk off the field, you're never as bad as you thought you were. I mean, sometimes you're sitting in the locker room going, boy, I called ball strikes and strikes balls. I was terrible. You weren't that bad.
Okay.
But let me flip this on you. There's times you walk in the locker room, you go, man, I was awesome. I'm the man. I was really good. You know what? No, you weren't. You weren't as good as you thought you were. So you keep that in mind as you walk out there.
That's a good one to keep in mind.
In the locker room after. Yep, absolutely.
Well, my friend, this has been an absolute privilege and a pleasure to visit with you. And I thank you so much for taking the time, for being generous with your time this morning. I think a lot of people will really enjoy hearing a little bit deeper of your story. The facts and figures are available for all to see online and everywhere else. But really appreciate what you shared today about the why and about what makes you tick and what's really going on for you out there. I admire that and I appreciate it, and it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much, Ted.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for letting me share that stuff. I enjoyed it, and look forward to it in person one day.
I would love that for that to happen. Let's make that happen, Ted. All the best to you, my friend. Enjoy your off season. Get rested up, okay?
Thank you. God bless you, and we'll talk soon.
Well, there you have it. Such a privilege for me to visit with Ted, and I sure hope you enjoyed it as well. Look, I like to nerd out on rules interpretations and dissecting wacky plays and perfecting my foul tip mechanic in the mirror just as much as all of you do. But you know by now that I really like to get to the heart of the matter with umpires and see if there's something more there than just calling balls and strikes and adding one more tally to the game's worked column. And if you're here listening, then you're probably that kind of umpire too. So, thank you. Big thanks to Ted for everything he shared today. And thank you to all our guests who so generously give their time to let me ask them questions and probe into their umpire souls for nothing really in return but my thanks. Our guests have been great, and they are the ones who really make this show worth listening to. I'm so fortunate to get to spend time with these great umpires and these great men and women. All right, so with the conclusion of Season 2, what comes next? Well, over the next several weeks, just as I did between Seasons 1 and 2 of the show, I'm going to take a little time, a short hiatus, to reflect and consider what comes next for Umpire Inspire. A little planning, a little plotting, a little scheming. We'll see what happens. But do please know that it is such a pleasure and a joy for me to bring you the show. It's a ton of fun. And me personally, well, as my local Little League's umpire-in-chief, I'm going to be doing all of the usual off-season things, thinking about next season and how to best recruit, how to best manage and lead our volunteer umpires. I'll be working with my small group of fellow UICs and my even smaller crew of local umpires in my league to think through training in our district and how to best serve our umpires. And just like Ted said, I'll have my nose in the rule books, baseball and softball, for sure. The rule book I really need to become best friends with this offseason is NFHS, though. You guys know that I've got just one season of high school baseball under my belt, and I cannot wait to get back at it in 2021. But I have a long way to go when it comes to rules knowledge and interpretations on the high school ball field. So that will definitely be one of my big goals over these next several months. And you know what else? I'm also going to remember to celebrate this podcast and just how darn fun it has been for me to talk with our guests and to make so many new friends across the country and even around the world through this show. It's been amazing. And I have said it many times before, the Umpire Inspire podcast is for you. It really is. It makes me very, very happy to think that this show is something that you have enjoyed. But you know what? More than just a way to pass the time, I hope this show and our guests inspire you to consider how you can be a better umpire, how you can be a better partner, and how you can be a better servant to the game. And with that, take good care of yourself, take good care of your loved ones, and I'll see you next time on the Umpire Inspire podcast.